Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. I'm Megha Sharma, and this is our rolling coverage of the American elections, the voting taking place in full stead. Now, America is all geared up to pick its president in the coming days. Now, voters face a significant choice, and the world watches as the democratic process unfolds. However, this is also the country where the Capitol Hill insurrection incident took place in 2021. The Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, who is in the opposition, currently faces 34 indictments and perhaps more. Now, these events, along with the assassination threats to Donald Trump, have raised global concerns. While America often promotes itself as the flag bearer of democracy and lectures the world on free and fair elections, a pressing question emerges. Could America take a page from India's vibrant democracy? Ambassador Gupta, talking about, I've highlighted these few concerns, particularly about the 2021 insurrection that happened, shockwave sent across the globe, accusations being made by Donald Trump that the polls were rigged, the elections had been stolen from the Republicans, and now you see, assassination bids on the opposition leader, the presidential candidate from the Republican Party, who is being aimed at, who is being targeted, and the police, the security is not tight enough to be able to ensure the security and safety of one of the biggest leaders, most popular leaders, and particularly the one who is fighting the election against Kamala Harris. Add to that, there have been other concerns that have been raised by people across the globe when it comes to American elections. How do you view, can America at this point of time learn a thing or two from India?
Megha, I'm very glad that you have chosen this particular subject for this segment of your program, because America has developed this habit of lecturing other countries in way too much, particularly developing countries, and it thinks that America is the bastion or the king of democracy, and other countries are just little learners and they have a lot to learn. But if we examine America's own record, we find, as you said just now, there are a lot of deficiencies. You see, America cannot secure its presidential candidates. There have been 2 attempts on Donald Trump, and unlike, let's say, India, last time, when this election was held, Donald Trump refused to accept the results of this election. In India, it doesn't happen like that. Our candidates have seldom been the targets of assassination, or the losing candidates have. There have been murmurs about EVMs and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, the candidates who lose, they accept the result of the election very gracefully. Then similarly, America is so quick to term the elections in other countries as unfair or as marred, particularly when it doesn't suit its political interests, But, we people here in India, we are so decent, dignified people. We don't comment on the elections in other countries. So I think the arrogant politicians in America will have a couple of things to learn as to how elections are conducted. The way America is becoming a divided society, it is really very worrying, and the quality of candidates which are being thrown up, in America and Europe, that again is also worrying, because these countries, they wield so much of power. United States is the only superpower now, and it controls the global political, financial, economic, technological, military balance. So I think it is important that people who come into power are those who are balanced, who can take a more sober view of global developments and issues. So yes, you're right. There is a lot that American politicians and others can learn from countries like India.
Right, absolutely. Also with me, KP Nair, and I do want to highlight, just a few days ago when Jeff Bezos of Washington Post decided to not endorse one party over the other, which we have Washington Post has been, endorsing the Democrats over the past several years. And such a strong reaction coming in. There were a number of employees, number of journalists who were working for WAPO decided to quit from the media agency. Now, on one hand, you're talking about being fair. You are a newspaper. You are, a journalism agency, a news agency that touts itself to be the flag bearer of fairness, independence, unbiased, and there you have, and Jeff Bezos, your company owner, decides not to endorse and be fair, be actually fair in the election. There are journalists who are quitting left, right, and center.
Well, the controversy about Washington Post endorsement, I think, is a reflection of the growing corporatization of the US media. It has been a trend in recent years. Washington Post is not the only newspaper where journalists were stopped from endorsing a candidate. LA Times, Los Angeles Times, the owner did exactly the same thing, as a result of which the editorial page editor of LA Times quit. But I think this whole issue of endorsing a candidate is a storm in a teacup, I mean, I don't endorse anything, I don't approve of anything that Jeff Bezos, the Washington Post owner, wrote in his article. But one point he made was very relevant, that the endorsements are immaterial, It really concerns, I mean, you and I as journalists would like to see these endorsements go through and give importance to our own profession, but really it's a storm in a teacup. But I would like to go back to what Ambassador Yogesh Gupta said about the US lecturing other countries and all. I don't think we should really complain about it, because the United States has never, not at any point in the last 75 years since India's independence, criticized Indian election system. Actually, repeatedly, again and again, in State Department statements and White House statements, they have praised India's electoral system. They have praised the peaceful conduct of Indian elections. I mean, if Americans criticize elections in Venezuela, if Americans criticize elections in Chad, we are not holding a candle for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay on with me, sir. I have to address this. Visuals on your screens right now. Donald Trump and his wife Melania Trump at this point of time have stepped out. They are at the polling station. This is at Palm Beach in Florida. So the moment comes when Donald Trump is now going to cast his vote. So this is as much as an appearance for the media as it is for his own self, when he puts himself on the line for that very prestigious presidency that he has been vying for. All right, let me once again get in. Okay, let's listen into what Donald Trump's saying.
And left Michigan late at night. Many of you were with us. And I hear we're doing very well. We did a great job in that we brought it back to the states, as you know. I believe in exceptions, as Ronald Reagan did. And we did a great job. We did something that they've wanted to do for 52 years. Yes, please.
Mr. President, you talk a lot about if you win, there are tens of millions of Harris supporters who will be upset. What would your plan be to reach out to those people, bring them in? What would your message be?
Well, it'll be just that. We want to bring everybody in. We want to be very inclusive, and we will be very inclusive. We have a great country, but we have a country that's in trouble. It's in big trouble in many ways, and we have to straighten it out. We have crime is through the roof. We have people pouring through our borders that are not exactly perfect. They come out of prisons. 13,000 people convicted of murder. We don't need this in our country. We have enough difficulty. We don't need that. So I think people saw that, and it just seems that the conservatives are voting very powerfully.
Looking back,
Just finish it up, guys.
how are you feeling? Nervous, anxious, excited?
No, I feel very confident. I have felt. You know, we went in with a very big lead today, and it looks like Republicans have shown up in force. So we'll see how it turns out. But it seems that they have really shown up in force. I just got a call from Dan Patrick in Texas. He said they've never seen anything like it. It's been very good.
Looking back, is there anything you would do differently about your campaign? Do anything you regret about how you ran this campaign?
Look, regrets. You always have regrets. I can't think of any, to be honest, to use her expression. I can't think of any. Look, I ran a great campaign. I think it was maybe the best of the three. We did great in the first one. We did much better in the second one, but something happened. And this was the best. I would say this was the best campaign we ran.
President Trump, do you accept the possibility that you and Vice President Harris both might not get to 270 electoral votes by the end of tonight?
It should never happen. A thing like that should never happen. This election should be over. They spend all this money on machines. And frankly, if they'd use paper ballots, it would be over by 10 o'clock. And by the way, the paper ballots would cost 8%. It would be 8% of the cost. If they would use paper ballots, voter ID, proof of citizenship, and one-day voting, it would all be over by 10 o'clock in the evening. It's crazy. They use these very expensive computers, and I'm hearing in Pennsylvania they won't have an answer till 2 or 3 days from now. I think it's an absolute outrage if that's the case. Now, maybe it'll be later, but it's paper ballots in France. They went paper ballots because the mail-in was not working. It was corrupt. And in France, they went paper ballots. And at 10 o'clock in the evening, they had 37 million votes counted and done. They had a winner, they had a loser. And in this country, I mean, I'm just hearing that in certain states, it's going to be a long time, and it won't even be close. It won't even be that close. They say, I'm going to win the state, but it's going to take a long time to certify it.
Could you see a world where you don't declare victory tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing the same things that you're hearing. I'm hearing states where I'm up by a lot, but they won't have a final number for a long time.
What are your plans for the night in terms of watching the results and so forth?
So we're going to have a very special group of people, many of whom you know, and they'll be at Mar-a-Lago. In addition, we'll have 4,000 or 5,000 people at the convention center. On the assumption I win, I mean, I don't know if something else happens. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of declaring victory, but if in normal times I would go over to the convention center, let's say at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or something, but I just don't know. It looks like we have a very substantial lead. It looks like we have many more Republicans voting today than Democrats, so if you have a lead and we have a bigger vote, that means you're doing very well, but they have to call a winner. They should, and they should call a winner, yes. Just stop talking about that. Go ahead. Oh, I don't know. I was honored to get Joe Rogan last night. I mean, Joe Rogan's a big deal. He's a very respected person. And I must tell you, Megan was fantastic. She got up and said some things that were really pretty amazing. But before that, I just think we ran a good campaign. I had good policy. We want people to come into our country, but they have to come in legally. You know, we want strong borders, and we want people to come in. We want to be totally inclusive, but they have to come in. I think that was a big issue. To me, that was the biggest issue. I may be wrong. You know, a lot of people said inflation. Inflation's a disaster, but I think it's a second issue. I think the first is the border. We can't allow criminals to be put back into our country or to be put into our country. So you have 13,000 plus murderers allowed to roam in our country. Not going to be allowed. They have to go. You have drug dealers. You have terrorists. You have a tremendous amount of people that should not be in our country, and we need strong borders in this country. And I think people are voting. And I think it's the number one issue. We'll see how it pans out, but I think it's the number one issue. I don't have to tell them that. I don't have to tell them that there'll be no violence. Of course there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. These are people that believe in no violence. Unlike your question, you believe in violence. Go ahead. Well, I think I'll be at Mar-a-Lago for the most part. We have a lot of political professionals. I'm going over now with Melania, who I'm very proud of. She's got the #1 bestseller. Can you believe that? He can believe it. But so we're very proud of the job she's done with that. Her book is #1. But we're going to go over to the office in West Palm, and we're going to say hello to the workers. They've worked very hard.
Will Georgia kind of be your first indication of whether it's going to be a
I think so. I mean, I hear we're doing very well there in Georgia. I hear we're doing very well. I hear we're doing very well everywhere. Now, I may regret that statement, but I'm hearing that we're doing very well. Would you go louder? No, I haven't prepared a speech. No, I did speeches last night, all day long, all night long. At 2 o'clock in the morning, we left, and we did a lot of speeches. You can probably tell. No, I don't have to do that. You know, I'm not a Democrat. I'm able to make a speech on pretty quick notice. If I win, I know what I'm going to say, and I don't even want to think about the losing part. I would like to tell all of the people that are online to stay online. We have tremendous Republican lines, and I've been asked actually to say it. It takes a while. I'd like to just make the statement that I'd like the Republicans to stay online. Democrats, if they'd like, they can leave. But I'd like the Republicans to stay online.
additional pressure today, given criminal cases against you that would proceed if you lost or go away from one?
I have no pressure whatsoever. I'm winning big cases. Those cases are all being won. The biggest case was the Florida case, and it's been won. I appreciate your nice question.
Sir, you and Mrs. Trump have been doing
No
this
pressure whatsoever.
for 9 years. Regardless of what happens tonight, is this your last campaign? Are you done after this?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
How do you feel about it?
Sad and very fulfilled. I think we're going to have a very big victory today.
Mrs. Trump, how are you feeling?
Very good, thank you. Thank you.
If you win, do you have a plan in place to start naming staff and
We're
officers?
already a transition team, but I don't like talking about that until I find out how we do. I mean,
Sort of threats from Iran, sort of assassination attempts, sort of shake your thinking and stuff, right?
well, it doesn't. Look, we're not looking to do damage to Iran, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. So, you know, my terms are very easy. They can't have a nuclear weapon. I'd like them to be a very successful country, but they just can't have a nuclear weapon.
Does it change the way you live, all the threats?
Well, I think Secret Service has been a little bit tougher, to put it mildly. I see more machine guns than I've ever seen in my life. We're surrounded by, I feel very confident with Secret Service. I think they've stepped up. Look, for a long time, they didn't give us the help. They didn't give us the assets, as they say, the manpower, woman power. They didn't give it to us. And we'd have rallies. You saw the rallies, 50, 60,000 people. And I'd have less people than Joe Biden, who had 5 people show up. And I'd have 55,000 people show up, and I had fewer people than him. So they should have done a much better job. And frankly, the president should make a very strong statement to the outside world, because
How are you feeling about your team as we head into the last day?
I think my team is incredible. Look, they say it's the best run campaign they've seen. Some people said it's the best run campaign they've ever seen. But in order to make that stick, you have to win.
How do you feel compared to your past campaigns? Are you more confident now than you were about your team than you were in the last two races?
My team, I'm very confident in. Many of them are the same players. As you know, Susie, a lot of the people are the same players. They've been very good.
Mr. President, Oprah said at Harris's rally last night, quote, if we don't show up tomorrow, it is entirely possible we won't be able to count the ballot again.
Well, I think it's ridiculous. You know, Oprah, I was on her last show, or one of her last shows, and they picked the biggest people and all of that, and made a big deal. And I'm disappointed. I think Oprah's become a major divider in our country, and I think, frankly, she should be ashamed of herself. And you know who else should be ashamed? Fox, because I've seen Oprah on Fox about 50 times making the same statement, and I think it's a disgrace what Fox does, because everyone thinks Fox is so pro-Trump. They're not pro-Trump at all. They've put Oprah on all morning long. That's all I see is Oprah. And, you know, I knew Oprah very well. She's been at Mar-a-Lago many times. Roger King had his funeral. That's the head of King World, which was Oprah's mentor. And Oprah chose the location. She said, Mar-a-Lago is the most beautiful place. Would it be possible to have Roger's funeral at Mar-a-Lago in the ballroom? We did it. The only time I've ever had a funeral there. And I think Oprah should be ashamed of herself to say that. She should be ashamed. She knows me. She wanted to run with me as the vice president. She was going to be the vice president. She wrote me a letter. It's in the book. And now she goes and makes statements like that. She's a divider. And Barack Hussein Obama is a divider, too.
There are people who are concerned that you didn't concede the election in 2020 when you lost. They're concerned that if you lost this election, you wouldn't concede again. What do you say to those people?
I think they're crazy. If I lose an election, if it's a fair election, I'd be the first one to acknowledge it. And I think so far, I think it's been fair. I think there's been a lot of court cases. Both sides are lawyered up. Thousands of lawyers are involved, thousands, can you imagine? And part of that is because we have too complicated a process. If we had a piece of paper, watermarked, you know that paper is more sophisticated now than computers. It's watermarked paper. It's unbelievable what happens with it. There's nothing you can do to cheat. And it costs you practically nothing to run. Think of it. We spend hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on these campaigns. You could do it for 8% of the cost and have accuracy, and we wouldn't have to be worried about when is Pennsylvania going to announce. It's really a shame.
Last question.
Well, he knows exactly what, but that's only based on what RFK told. I don't think RFK wanted that. You're talking about Health and Human Services. Let me tell you, he's a great guy, RFK, and he's going to do pretty much what he wants as far as I'm concerned. He wants health for women, for men, for children, and I happen to agree with a lot of the things he says. The one thing I told him, and I've told you in speeches for the last 2 weeks, we got to keep him away from the liquid gold, because the liquid gold, we have more than any of it. It's called oil and gas. That one I'm going to handle. Well, I'd be honored to have him. Now, I haven't spoken to Howard about that, but look, if you think of it, he came in third, in running for president, right? He ran a very good race. He had obstacles. The Democrats just really unfairly put obstacles up, and hence Kennedy left the Democrat Party for the Republicans. Now, he's a very smart guy. He's a very caring guy. He's very popular, too. We get up and introduce him. The place goes wild. No, we love having him. And you know who else we love having? Elon. He's been great. And everybody, everybody. Getting Joe Rogan last night and Megyn Kelly. This is very inclusive. This is a movement. This is the greatest political movement in the history of our country. And even you people, and some of you are fair sometimes, but it's the greatest movement in the history of our country, and I've made that statement 1,000 times. It has never been challenged. It is the greatest movement, and we're going to make America great again. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. This way. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Come on. Go, guys. Jack. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. How about
And he's He's spoken about a host of issues and most particularly about whether he thinks the elections are fair. He said he is going to be acknowledging the fact if he loses the election, and it is going to happen if he feels that the elections are fair and transparent. In fact, he's also spoken about a host of other issues, and particularly about his advocacy for paper ballots and how postal ballots is something that he is speculative of. All joining me on the telecast is Spencer Critchley. Spencer, what do you make of Donald Trump's press briefing, lasting about 10 minutes, if not more, and here's an opportunity for a photo op, and he's taken full advantage of it.
Of thumb with Donald Trump, if you assume the opposite of what he's saying, you'll get pretty close to what's the truth. Calling Oprah Winfrey, for example, a divisive personality is just one of many examples he managed to cram into those 10 minutes. Oprah Winfrey, I think, is well known around the world, certainly in the United States. She's considered to be one of the most unifying figures that we've ever seen amongst the universe of celebrities in the United States. And most people would see Oprah Winfrey emerging from her usual position of not endorsing candidates and throwing herself behind the candidacy of Kamala Harris, not because Oprah Winfrey is a Democratic partisan, but as she has said repeatedly, as have so many other nonpartisan or Republican figures in the United States, that it's not because Kamala Harris is a Democrat, it's because Kamala Harris is for democracy. She's a Democrat with a small d, somebody who believes in democracy. And the most important issue in this election is that we have one candidate who has advertised his intention to dismantle our democracy, turn it into a sham democracy like that of Hungary under Viktor Orban, a frequent guest at Mar-a-Lago, somebody Donald Trump has said he wants to imitate because he thinks he has the right approach, along with other authoritarians and outright dictators around the world who Trump openly admires. So, as I say, as usual with Trump, if you assume the opposite of what he's saying, you'll get pretty close to the truth. Okay,
we're talking about Oprah Winfrey. He's gone about, narrating an anecdote that he held a funeral on behalf of Oprah Winfrey at Mar-a-Lago, and he's also spoken about how she wanted to be his running mate as for vice presidency.
Yeah, I think that's quite unlikely. I think it's quite likely true that the event at Mar-a-Lago happened. This would be indicative again of the alarm with which somebody like Oprah Winfrey views Donald Trump as a potential next president of the United States, especially after his record during the first Trump administration, when we witnessed with our own eyes, it can't be said often enough, his organized attempt to overthrow democracy by overthrowing a free and fair election, which would have brought our democracy to an end. There are many people who used to like Donald Trump, who used to hang out with him. I myself remember during his years in New York real estate, when he was a sort of New York-based celebrity, frequently in the tabloid gossip pages, he was seen as kind of an appealing comedian. Few people took him seriously. Certainly the New York business community did not take him seriously. He likes to present himself as a titan of the business world in New York. Once again, the opposite is the truth. He drove 6 different companies into bankruptcy, established a fraudulent university and had to pay, I think it was a $25 million settlement in that, a fraudulent charity. He was notorious for not paying his bills, and ultimately could not get bank loans anymore except through Deutsche Bank under what many people see as quite questionable circumstances. But in those days, he wasn't taken particularly seriously by most of the rest of the country, but he was seen as quite entertaining and even likable. He I would say even now, shows what could have been the signs of a talented stand-up comedy career, because really his comic timing and delivery is really quite good.
And still he was elected as the president. At this point of time, if poll projections are to be believed, people are in favor of Donald Trump to handle the economy better than Kamala Harris.
Yes, and this is built on a brand image more than the reality, which is one of the strengths of Trump and has been all along. One of the things that he understands better than many Democrats do is the power of a simple branding message, which is why he is constantly coming up with these nicknames for his opponents. You know, you might remember Crooked Hillary as one of them, or Sleepy Joe, referring to Joe Biden. He understands that just one or two memorable words, or a vivid image on television, or a controversy that he cooks up from one day to the next, he understands very well the power of that. And on the economy, he was constantly asserting during his presidency, and has constantly asserted since, that he produced the greatest economy anybody has ever seen. Once again, the opposite is the truth. It was a mediocre economy under Trump. And by every measure, the Biden economy is actually better. Inflation did peak as the Trump administration was ending and as Biden came into office, but inflation rose around the world. And in fact, Biden brought inflation down faster than it came down in any other country. And by every other measure, GDP growth, employment growth, manufacturing income, wages rising, especially among working and middle class people, by every measure, Biden's economy has outperformed. But Trump understands that by just repeating a simple message, you know, the greatest economy anybody's ever seen, whereas Biden produced actually the economy that The Economist magazine just called the envy of the world. But an effective branding message will beat out the facts, the truth, every time. Unless you present the truth equally compellingly.
Okay, all right. Grant, what do you make of Donald Trump's speech as he went inside and cast his vote at Palm Beach?
He's certainly accessible to the press, and he has been for forever. Look at his 3 hours with Joe Rogan. Ask me any question, I'll tell you the answer. Then you look at his opponent, who they very carefully kept away from the press. And that's generally not a coincidence. So he, as I say, is very forthcoming about what he thinks. I would note that one would get the impression that he's Lucifer himself in human form, and I'm not quite convinced of that, to put it mildly. And that's something about our system these days, the way it's become, is that really the demonization, really the venom that's directed against one's opponents. Even a country like the United States can only handle so much of that. And you have to look at Trump himself and look at the support that he's had, say, from the Muslim community. And look at the black male vote that he's attracted. He's got about 40% of the Hispanic vote. Now, the idea is, of course, that these people are just too stupid and they wouldn't know any better. They're fooled by him. But no, that's condescending. And once again, a country cannot survive one side calling the other garbage. The people who were in the boats going into Normandy at Iwo Jima, I suppose they were the garbage as well. This has got to stop. But Trump, look at his 4 years. Look at Biden-Harris, look at that 4 years, and say you're a young person who wants to go buy a house. You can't afford it because of interest rates. Say you actually buy groceries and pay for them yourselves and you're not wealthy. This is a choice between buying food or filling up your gas tank. So really, we need a little more sort of actual fact. Look at the reality, and not the emotion-laden attacks on each side. And that's where the country's going to actually survive if it does. But as I say, I've never seen this kind of venom in my lifetime. This is 30 years war sort of hatred. But once again, look at the facts. And 80 million people, or however many who voted for Trump, these are not deplorables. These are not garbage. To suggest that they're stupid, well, that's a condescension that really is, to put it mildly, unfortunate and certainly uncalled for.
Okay.
If I could, Joe Biden did not call these people garbage, and Trump has such a long record of calling Democrats scum.
No,
J.D. Vance called them trash just last night.
And you know that.
No. He used the word garbage. He used the word garbage. He instantly corrected the misunderstanding and said he would not do that. And he's always careful to differentiate Trump from his followers. If you go back through the record, once again, the facts show. The facts also show. Well, you have to choose to ignore Biden's clarification, and you have to choose to ignore his record on this subject, which stands for itself. Whereas Trump routinely refers to people as garbage, people who oppose him. He's been doing it in recent days. J.D. Vance referred to Kamala Harris as trash who needs to be taken out last night. Trump also calls his opponents scum. He speculates about having them killed, executed for treason for the crime of disagreeing with him. And again, this is a man who tried to overthrow democracy. We don't have to resort to insults, and of course we should not insult his followers, and you'll be hard-pressed to find any Democratic politician who would.
But do you think this is more of histrionics and theatrics that were at play, particularly with regards to the garbage controversy? And I don't think people's minds are going to be changed because I don't know, Joe Biden ends up inadvertently calling Trump supporters as garbage. I mean,
no, and this is an
how much
example of the power of a brand message, as I may say, that Trump seizes on, so that this one word somehow is supposed to erase Trump's record of years of calling immigrants rapists and murderers, claiming that Haitians eat dogs and cats, referring to immigrants who happen to be brown or black, poisoning the blood of our nation. Again, we don't have to insult Trump. All we have to do is quote him or watch what he does.
Okay, and still, once again, I'm going to again put out the poll projections, and we talk about immigration, and Trump at this point of time is trumping Kamala Harris and getting the popular vote as if the projections were to be kept into consideration. I'm also being joined by KP Nair, who's a strategic analyst. And KP Nair, how do you view the American election, the kind of narratives that have been built? What is it that has, according to you, influence the voter when they cast their vote?
Well, I have been following the campaign in the last several months, and my distinct impression is that neither candidate goes into details. I mean, even at the last debate, both candidates, Trump and Kamala Harris, on economy, on immigration, they don't go into details. They state their overall position. But how do you get to do this, or how do you get to do that? I mean, even on economy, of course, my other panelists, I agree with them entirely that the US economy has done extremely well under Biden, despite apparent voter dissatisfaction. I think it is endemic in people to be unsatisfied. People are never satisfied to the point where they would support a certain candidate or a certain policy. But it is a fact that the US economy has done extremely well. I mean, 2.9% growth rate is the envy of the developing countries. Of course, India has a higher growth rate, GDP growth rate, but India is not a major economy in that sense, like the G7. But 2.9% growth is great. But how do you sustain the growth, That neither candidate is willing to.
Okay. No, but there have been. Trump has continued to say that he is going to be, bigger tariffs that are going to be imposed on imports, and particularly focusing on the kind of saber rattling that is being done by China. Talking about how there is going to be mass deportations of illegal immigrants that is going to take place. He is particularly focused on the border. Mexico was one of the biggest issues in the 2020 elections and the 2016 elections when he was campaigning, and he has carried forward that narrative as well. Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, how do you view these aspects, particularly when it comes to the election? And Trump has, this is what he started off his speech with. He said while people talk about the economy, the number one issue that is causing grief to the people of America and causing the economy to bleed is and increasing the crime, increasing the crime scene, increasing the number of frequency of crimes that take place is immigration, and that's what he is going to be taking head on. Okay, I don't have with me Ambassador Gupta, but would you like to take that question, Grant?
Well, we'll see. Certainly, you have a track record, Mr. Trump, and people remember the last 4 years. And as I said, just go into the supermarket and look at you can cite growth rates. And look at us. And yes, wealthy people benefit unduly, but go and see how the middle class lives. These aren't even the middle class anymore. Go look at the reality of it. People can see that. And as I said, try buying a house, see what interest rates are these days. And that's a concern to many, many people, as is the border as well. And you simply cannot have 10, 20 million illegal immigrants come in while others wait patiently in line and play by the rules. And the reference to criminals coming in with that influx, well, that's true. And everybody, that is well known. Once again, just do the homework. When you have Tren de Agua from Venezuela setting up in the United States, you've got some real problems. This is something which needs to be addressed. And also bringing in that many illegal immigrants is one that actually brings down wages. It hurts actually American workers. There's obviously part of America's ruling class that is very happy about that. But you simply cannot have this continue. And that is something which does resonate with a lot of people as well. And as I said, go back to the support which Mr. Trump has been able to attract. Today's Democratic Party is nothing like it was 30 years ago. In fact, it seems to hold what we used to consider blue-collar workers, the working class, with a certain amount of contempt. And as I stated earlier, look at the polls, not the emotion. Look at the attraction that Mr. Trump has had with Hispanic voters, once a very reliable Democratic bloc, and within the black vote, he's done well with that also. Even, as I said, Muslim leaders in Minnesota and Michigan have actually sided with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And that does suggest that there's something that attracts
fair enough.
them to him.
And then Grant, but then when he was talking to the media, I think the number one thing that he spoke about, and that was the first thing that he spoke about, was about him worried about how the elections, the results are going to be delayed because of the postal votes, because of the early voting that has taken place. He continued to advocate the use of paper ballots. Now, are these concerns by Donald Trump legitimate? These were the same concerns that he had raised in 2020 as well.
Well, even if Trump wasn't running for president, these are legitimate concerns. There's different ways to run elections. And you look at France, for example. They've been cited earlier. They do very well. Paper ballots, as much as you can, same-day voting. This is probably the best way to do it. The way it's become, we've really got a hodgepodge of processes that do raise doubt in a lot of people's minds. And once you've got that doubt in the electorate, that's very unhealthy for any society. Even if somehow it's a very clean election, once the doubt's there, it's hard to get rid of. But our whole system, regardless of Trump or not, it is one that it does need a relook. And if one does look at actually electoral process, electoral law, and there is such a thing as the United Nations sees it, and look at it from start to finish, and you see how we match up with that. And I'm afraid that there's plenty of room for improvement. But the more simple approach would be better than what we have now. So one hopes that we can get through this, and America does have the advantage of having state systems. There's not a single national system, so that provides us some help. But it is a system that's become unwieldy, and does it always reflect the will of the electorate, an informed electorate, the way, once again, the United Nations calls for when it sets up a vote somewhere. Does it do that? I think we've got some room for improvement. A lot of us did take it for granted for many years that our system, it has flaws, but we thought it was pretty good, and I think it's still acceptable. But it is, if you say, match it up to international standards, to United Nations requirements, and you can see where there's room for tightening up.
Okay.
Megha,
Yes.
you mentioned
Yes,
Mexico. Trump's record on Mexico. But when Trump came to power, he said he will build the wall and make Mexico pay for it. He didn't build the wall. Half the wall that he promised was not built, and Mexico did not pay even a dime for it. And you mentioned Trump's economic policy, that he would have tariff, he would have sanction duties and have restrictions on China. Do you think China will sit back and accept all this? And people don't know, most people in India don't know that the US flag on that President Joe Biden wears on his lapel, it comes from China. Most of the flags, stars and stripes that are flying in the United States, they are imported from China, you know. So, I mean, China is not going to sit back and not retaliate. And if Trump does what he promises to do, China may suffer, but the United States will suffer as well.
Okay, all right. I don't know, taking a look from the other side of the spectrum, talking about America and India relationship, and whether this could help in building fresh supply chains and investments coming into United States, and India taking advantage for the kind of sanctions that could be imposed and the higher tariffs on China. But that's another thing. But Spencer, quickly about talking about elections and the issue that has been raised time and again by Donald Trump, that why are the election results delayed? Why is it so difficult for America to count its votes in a single day? Keeping in mind, I take a look at our democracy over here, 1.5 billion people who live, and crores who come out and cast their vote, billions come out and cast their vote. But the counting starts in the at dawn, and at the crack of dawn, and it ends by the end of the evening.
Yes, well, India, in several ways, has set an example for rapid digitization of political processes and the economy. That, of course, is an argument against the paper ballot system that Donald Trump is so excited about. He was speaking in that press conference as if the watermark on paper had just been invented. He just thought that was amazing.
Okay.
As far as trust in elections, this is also typical of Trump and his enablers. They create the problem and then decry the problem. So he has spent years attacking Americans' faith in our elections. Once again, let me point out, going so far as to try to overthrow the 2020 election, resulting in now thousands of his supporters being tried and convicted and sent to jail while he remains walking around free. And in that, he's assisted by a media universe, Fox News and others, who back up this paranoia about our elections. Now, over and over and over again, including by Republican judges and Trump-appointed Republican judges, his claims about so-called election fraud have been proven to be groundless. And when he's been challenged to produce any credible evidence, he has failed again and again and again, and yet he has still refused to accept the results of the 2020 election, claiming it was stolen from him, which most of his supporters believe, even though it is a flagrant and extremely dangerous lie, because it does go to the heart of our democracy. Are there ways that our election system could be improved? Of course, I'm sure there are, and it is a hodgepodge of systems across states and even across counties across the country. But that is also part of its resilience, because it's very hard for somebody to, supposedly hack our election system, because there is not one national election system. There are many, many of them. But there has never been any evidence, and this is after exhaustive investigations, that there is anything like a level of fraud that would have changed the results of an election. As many people told Trump when he was selling this lie during the 2020 campaign, including his own Attorney General, William Barr, who told him, we have looked into all of this, it's BS. And Barr is somebody who had proven himself to be extremely eager to support Trump, using the DOJ as far as he could legally to do that. His cybersecurity czar, also a Republican, Chris Krebs, called the 2020 election the most secure in American history. And for that, Trump fired him, because it went against the narrative he was trying to sell to his followers. And so many of his followers enthusiastically support him because they believe all of these lies. They believe that he's a patriot who's trying to save America from these evil Marxists on the other side, or these hordes of criminal immigrants. Another lie, by the way, there is an immigration problem at the border, which Biden has been addressing. The lie is that all of these people are dangerous monsters when in fact they commit crimes at a rate significantly lower than native-born Americans do. But as I say, when you hear Trump make an assertion, it's a pretty safe bet if you just assume that the opposite is true.
Okay, all right. Grant, would you like to say something about this, what Spencer has mentioned, particularly about Trump and his allegations that elections are rigged that happened in 2020? Do you think it's simply because he's a sore loser and if the defeat comes his way, he has to make excuses to justify?
Well, so a few things to keep in mind. That Trump raising doubts about an election is not the first time it's happened. Remember Al Gore in 2000, and you get the line, well, George Bush was selected, not elected. You have Hillary Clinton claiming that the election was stolen from her. You have the prominent figure Stacey Abrams, who ran for governor in Georgia, loses, and she refused to admit that she lost. This isn't anything new in our system. And the more important thing is to look at our system.
It's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. Nobody's ever tried to overthrow democracy since the Civil War.
What happened? No, listen.
I'm sorry. Al Gore is an example of graciously challenges. He will go down in history, and even Republicans recognize his grace in accepting the result for the good of the country. And he has never repeated this line about selected. Of course, you can find Democratic partisans who say that sort of thing, and there remain concerns about the role of the Supreme Court.
But that's what they say.
And Hillary Clinton formally conceded the results within 24 hours. The next day, it's 4 years later, almost 4.5 years later, Trump refuses still to accept the results of the 2020 election, and there is no evidence he's ever been able to present that there was a problem. Stacey Abrams in Georgia, she raised objections that she had with the way that election was conducted. I personally believe that she should have been more clear about accepting the legal result, which she does. She recognizes, and she will say that, she recognizes that she did not win that election. She still has problems with the way it was run. That's very different from attacking the basic legitimacy of our electoral system, which Trump is doing the same way that Viktor Orban, Vladimir Putin, and other authoritarians do. You start by undermining confidence in the institutions of democracy and make people believe only the authoritarian strongman can save them.
Okay, all right. Let's also take a look, listen into what Donald Trump, I think he's cast his vote, is again speaking to people at Palm Beach, at the polling station that he is in. Listen into what he's saying. So that's Donald Trump. He's cast his vote, returning home, and of course there are a lot of cheers and applause as his supporters goad him as the final election result day inches closer. I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast. Stay tuned on NewsX. More updates on the US election, presidential polls in just a moment after this break.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.